What is up, everybody? Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Silver Lions Playbook podcast. And as always, we are back with more Detroit Lions news, rumors, and reports, as well as some opinions. So stay tuned for that. But first things first, we're going to cover something we didn't cover last time, or last episode, I should say. For some odd reason, I forgot this and left it out. But the TJ Hawkinson trade. This one for me doesn't, it's hard to explain because when the trade first happened, I was very very upset. Mainly just because it felt to me that Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell were signaling that yet another year is lost. It felt to me like they traded T.J. Hawkinson to the number one team in the NFC North because they knew the season was just dead. It was over. Um, the real problem that I still have with the trade is that they traded him to the Minnesota Vikings out of all teams. You could have traded him literally anywhere else. I mean, Green Bay or Chicago, obviously not, but anywhere other than the NFC North, and I would have zero qualms. I would not care really at all, honestly. Because after I thought about it a little bit more, it really wasn't a clear, the Lions were giving up on the season. It was more of just like, okay, here's where we're at. We think we're a team that can win some football games, but at the same time, this tight end is not changing, our win-loss record too much. So it wasn't like we got rid of a guy that is going to win us 3 games down the stretch. I mean, it's possible that he could contribute to wins. But we've seen in the last few weeks that, we don't necessarily need an elite tight end. Well, obviously we'd like one, but we don't need one, at least as of right now. Which, maybe down the line we might pick up another guy that can be more of a receiver because that's kind of what, you're looking for in today's tight end. But I was very bullish on the trade when it first happened because I just didn't like it. TJ Hawkinson was one of my favorite players. I felt like he was the only player on this Lions team that I could really go, he's 100% staying on this team. And I mean, I'm not the only one because if you think about it, a year ago, people were saying we should trade Hawkinson and they were being called idiots. Obviously, they're smarter than the rest of us because they saw it coming before we did. But with that being said, the only negative I really have about it, after we won two games in a row after the trade, I really don't like the fact that we traded him to the NFC North, and not only that, to the number one team in the NFC North, whom we have to play again in Detroit. Like, that one just kind of blows my mind because it's like I know Dan Campbell doesn't really care what the fans think, and Brad Holmes doesn't really care what the fans think, but at the end of the day, the fans pay your salary, bro. Like I know the owners like they pay it for you technically, but that money's coming from somewhere. Which I'm not saying they should go, well, that means the fans should get whatever they want. No. My point is I just don't really like how they know they have to play him again in Detroit, and they know the backlash that's going to come from that, especially when they lose, because let's face it, they're going to lose. The Minnesota Vikings are one of the best teams in the NFC, if not in the NFL right now, period. But I mean, it's NFC North, so you never know what's going to happen. We almost beat them once this year, but again, we just gave them one of our best players. So I mean, it doesn't help us, in any way right now. Which obviously we're not building for right now. We're building for the future, and that's why we got picks. We got a second round pick and a third round pick, and we gave up Hock and 2/4. I could have went without the fourth round pick trades. I'll be honest with you, that kind of soured me a little bit too because it's like I get it. If you got a second and a third for T.J. Hawkinson, good job. I am patting you on the back because that's a steal. You just stole from the Vikings. But we had to give back 2 4th round picks, which, yes, I know 4th round picks aren't first round picks, but they're picks nonetheless. And at the end of the day, when you're trying to build a team through the draft, you need as many picks as possible. And it just felt like, I mean, we basically just moved up on those 4th round picks, literally, is all we did. We just moved up like, 60 picks here and 100 picks there or whatever, which is great. Don't get me wrong, I do like it, but I just feel like giving up 2 1st round or 2 4th round picks, I mean, just isn't good. I don't really like that, especially like I said, when you're trading in the NFC North, and generally when you're trading interdivision. You just ask for way more than you would, trading to anybody else, which is a big reason why Jimmy G wasn't traded in the offseason, because Seattle Seahawks were one of the teams that were interested, and the 49ers just weren't going to pull that trigger because they know if you trade a guy to your NFC or your divisional rivals, you're going to have some issues when it comes to fans and when you play that guy again and he absolutely rips you apart. It's just one of the unspoken, well, not really unspoken, it's a spoken rule in the NFL. You do not trade good players to division rivals. You do not do it. Most of the time, they don't even trade the guy to the same damn conference just because we might have to play him in the playoffs at one point. Now we're going to have to play TJ Hawkinson 2 times a year, every year. I mean, and not just TJ Hawkinson, guys. They got Justin Jefferson, the best receiver in the league. In the league right now. Justin Jefferson, and he's 24 years old. TJ Hawkinson is 25. So you just gave them one of the better tight ends, and they have the best receiver. Obviously, Kirk's on his way out. Well, I wouldn't say obviously, but he's getting a little older and more, expensive. But I don't love it, nor do I hate it. It's going to really boil down to the fact of who do they draft with those 2 picks, because they're second and third round picks, which Josh Pascal was a good pick last year. But we haven't had the greatest second and third round picks these last few years, unfortunately. Aleem McNeil was a great third round pick last year, but our second round pick is not good. Can't even get on the field, apparently. So that was a waste of a pick, a complete waste. I just feel like there's really, unless he comes back and is a stud, then I don't even want him on the football team anymore, unfortunately. He just can't stay healthy. He's been injured literally every single week since he put on a Detroit Lions uniform. Don't know what that is, but, we know what it is. It's a back injury, but he was drafted with it. That just is another thing that makes me question Brad Holmes a little bit. Like, I get it. You got a lot of darts, and you got to throw them, and you got to, hope for the best, but why are you continuously drafting injured players? Jameson Williams, I totally understand. He was the best receiver in the NFL draft last year. Now, does that mean he will be the best receiver in the NFL draft, or best rookie receiver, I should say, coming in? Maybe not. We don't know. He's injured. He hasn't played a fucking snap yet. So we'll see on that front. But on that same note, I just feel like, long story short, with the Hawkinson trade, I'll wrap it up with this. I don't hate it. I don't love it. I just really don't like he was traded to the Vikings. That's my big qualm. But we'll just have to see where the draft picks go and who we get, and if they're worth anything, because we haven't had great success with those picks lately. Now, with that being said, since we're talking about injuries, kind of, we have some news on Mr. Jameson Williams and DJ Chark and Romeo Okwara. Now, if you watched last episode, which you should go back and watch now if you haven't, I mentioned that, Romeo Okwara, we don't know if or when he's coming back. I didn't hear anything up to that point on a return for him. Now, we have news. Romeo Okwara has now officially returned to practice. Great. That is honestly the best thing we could have hoped for at this point right now. Just because of the fact that, we could use the help defensively. He's getting paid quite a bit of money, and he's not playing at all. Obviously, Aiden Hutchinson needs some help, across from him in terms of pass rushing. He needs a guy that can take some of those double teams off, which hopefully Romeo Okwara can do and will do, because that's what he's done, in his whole career since he was picked up by the Lions back in the Matt Pat days. But I feel like Romeo Okwara, if he gets completely healthy, could not completely change the defense, but would be a huge addition to the defense and be the closest thing to completely changing it. And with that being said, we don't really know when he's going to return. I've heard he might be able to play this weekend. I really, really doubt that'll happen. Just because I feel like they're not trying to rush anybody back, whether that be Jameson, whether that be Chark or Okwara, like I said. I just feel like it'd make more sense to bring him back Thanksgiving week, just in case, he's not completely healthy, he's not completely ready. Then that way we know we'll have him for the hardest game of the season, which is going to be the Buffalo Bills on Thanksgiving. And as all Lions fans know, Thanksgiving is our Super Bowl. So if we can win against the Bills on Thanksgiving, that would completely change a lot of things for Lions fans. But With that being said, we don't really know exactly when Okwara is going to come back. Like I said, he's practicing now, so that's a good sign, and we'll see how it goes. But then again, DJ Chark again is another guy who is coming back off of IR this week. He could play this week. I have heard it's more likely that Chark plays than Okwara, but I'm going to take that with a grain of salt because, like I said before, we're not going to force anything. We're not going to rush anybody back. DJ Chark is the only guy that I could understand rushing back because he's probably not coming back next year. And at the end of the day, you need bodies, you need football players, and you need the best football players that you have on the field at all times. So it's one of those things that I wouldn't rush him back. Like if he's just not ready to go, he's not ready to go. But if he's like 75%, play, bro. You're playing. Sorry. You at least be a decoy. I mean, realistically, DJ Chark has done basically nothing for us all season except drop a few balls. I mean, he's had some good games. Don't get me wrong. I'm just kind of being an ass. But I just feel like he didn't live up to the hype thus far. We still have, 6 or 7 games left now. So hopefully he can, come back and earn his $10 million that we paid him this season. But as of right now, it's not looking too great. But with that being said, Okwara and Chark should both be back on Thanksgiving. From what I'm hearing, that is their date when they should be back. They might be able to come back earlier than that, but we shall see. Now, the injury news that everyone has been waiting for and everyone wants to hear the most is that of Mr. Jameson Williams, the Detroit Lions' brand new wide receiver. Obviously, he was drafted in the first round. We traded up for him, and he was coming off an ACL tear in that national championship game. So it's going to take a while for him to get back on the field. But his practice window just opened as well. So that's a positive because now we know he will be back within the next 3 weeks. Dan Campbell did mention, though, that he will not be playing this weekend. Likely won't be playing on Thanksgiving either, but you never know, he said. But most likely he will be back that following week against the Jaguars, which, in my opinion, I'm just ready to see Jameson on the field. I'm tired of waiting for him, to be honest with you, which obviously we're going to wait because no reason in forcing a guy like him out, especially when, he's a guy that you're basically looking at as your future wide receiver one. Now, with that being said, we still need to see him on the field. He needs to play some snaps, and he needs to get back in football shape and just get back into it. We saw Jerry Jacobs come back pretty quick and look really well, or look really good last week in his first. I don't know if he started per se, but he played a majority of the snaps, and he looked very good. So hopefully we can see something like that with Jameson. His first game back, he probably won't play very many snaps. He'll probably play, I don't know, less than 20% of snaps, even if that. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he plays less than 10% of snaps in his first game back. That's just because they just want to get him running routes on the field, seeing what it's like to be up against corners again. With that being said, though, I would guess he will be back Jacksonville week on a very, very limited snap count, and then they'll just kind of get the snap count up every week as we go. And depending on how we're doing towards the end of the season, it'll probably keep going up. But honestly, I could really see them giving him just like, 70% of snaps maximum this year, just because they don't want him to be playing too much and, re-injure himself or, anything like that. Now, with that being said, I really, really think he'll be back for Jacksonville. That's what I would guess. That's what I'm going to go with right now. And if I had to put money on it, I think Jameson Williams will make his NFL debut Week 13 versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, to move on from the injuries, move on from the updates, let's talk about a guy that, has been getting his flowers for the most part, but I almost feel like hasn't been talked about enough in terms of just how good he's been this year versus how bad he was in years prior. Jeff Okudah is a legitimate lockdown corner now. Let me rephrase that. He's a legitimate corner one. I'm not going to say he's Jalen Ramsey or anything right now, but he has shown that he can make plays, he can tackle, he can cover. That's all you really want from a cornerback, Obviously, we've had this conversation, is Jeff Okudah a bust? Subjectively, You could say that, yeah, sure, because he was picked number 3 overall, and as a corner, you're supposed to come out and be a top 5 corner immediately. The moment you step foot on the field, you are supposed to be a top 5 corner if you're drafted that high, which clearly Jeff Okudah wasn't. He didn't play great when he was healthy, but he was injured a lot too. Didn't have great coaching, I would say. And also, he wasn't used in a great scheme. They were using him as a primary man-to-man corner, and that's just not what he is, unfortunately. He can play man, don't get me wrong, but he's more of a read and react type of player, I believe. So I think he fits a little bit better in zone. And if some of you have watched this podcast since last year, you guys will remember, or not since last year, but a few years ago, you guys will remember that I did say Jeff Okudah is more of a slot/zone corner, which he's not playing in the slot, obviously, but he's showing a lot of those skills that I was talking about. He can tackle. He's good at read and react. And he's just, he's better in zone than he is in man, in my opinion. Now, with that said, he had a game-tying pick 6 last week that pretty much put us back in the game against the Bears. It was all but over, in my opinion, and then he literally almost single-handedly brought us back into that game. So I really do think Jeff Okudah is our most improved player. It's not close at all. He has become a legit stud, I would say. I'm not going to say he's elite yet just because he's still got his issues, but he's become a legit stud. And with that being said, I really am excited to see how Okudah is going to fare for the next few years. See how he's going to be with this new, quote-unquote, new coaching staff. Because we did just fire our DB's coach. So we'll see who takes that job next season. But it's really good to see Jeff Okudah finally look like a legit corner. This is what we always wanted. It just sucks that it's 3 years in and we're going to have to, extend him in a few years. So that's really the only negative about that. But with that being said, let's get into the game this Sunday. So we are traveling to the 7-2 New York Giants to take them on at MetLife Stadium. Now, are the Giants legit 7-2, or are they one of those teams that somehow is winning those close games? I think it's a little bit of both. And I really believe that the Giants are a solid team. I don't think they're... How do I say this? I don't think they're among the elite of the elites. So no, I don't think they're as good as Buffalo. I don't think they're as good as Kansas City. I don't, those teams, I just don't think they're that good. But they're in that below level, just right below that mid-level. There's probably like 10 teams in that area. But I feel like with the Giants, the main thing that the Detroit Lions need to do to win this game this Sunday is, number one, we have to stop Saquon, which that's probably not going to happen, and it's probably going to be the death of us. But if we can somehow at least corral Saquon Barkley and keep him under 75 rushing yards, 70 rushing yards, I think we can win the game. Because Daniel Jones isn't turning the ball over. So you can't really rely on that to happen to help you back into the game. And I feel like at the same time, though, Daniel Jones isn't necessarily a huge play guy. So that's not something we'll necessarily have to worry about too much. But at the same time, it's always a worry. So clearly, number one is to stop Saquon and somehow keep him under 75 rushing yards. Number two, we have to get pressure on the quarterback and get home. Because we see a lot of the time in Detroit, we get pressure on the QB, and he runs around a little bit in circles, moves this way, moves that way, and then he throws the ball, or he runs. The Lions just can't seem to tackle in the backfield for some reason. Now, obviously, we said Romeo Okwara probably won't be back this week, so that's a negative when it comes down to this, because he would be a great force for us to be able to put out there against the Giants' offensive tackles. Now, I think Aiden Hutchinson and Josh Paschal and the rest of our pass rushers could have a solid day against this Giants front. Because the Giants' offensive line isn't terrible, but it's not great by any means. They've got 2 pretty good tackles, but their interior offensive line is shaky, especially in pass blocking. Now, with that being said, I really hope Josh Pascal and Ellie McNeil and Aiden Hutchinson and Julian Okwara and all these guys can get home, and Charles Harris hopefully can get home, get to the quarterback, and hopefully, going to my next point, they can force a few turnovers. Because at the end of the day, we will not win this game if we lose the turnover battle. So what we need to do is force Daniel Jones into at least one turnover, if not two. A sack, fumble, or a interception, or both, or whatever you want to do. Doesn't really matter to me. 2 turnovers, though, is the line that we want to hit against this Giants offense because their defense is pretty solid. You know, I feel like our offense is actually going to have some issues coming into New York and playing against that defense because Dexter Lawrence, their defensive tackle, has been an absolute beast this season. One of the best pass rushing defensive tackles in the NFL, and he's like 340 pounds. So it's going to be a lot of fun. They also have Leonard Williams. They also have a few other guys that I'm blanking on their names right now, but they have a lot of good defensive linemen in general, whether it be interior, on the edge or whatever it is. Their linebackers are not quite as good as their defensive line, of course. They're definitely the weakness of their defense. I would say the biggest weakness of this Giants team is their offensive line and their linebackers. Because their corners are solid. I wouldn't say they're great by any means, but they're solid. Right around what we have in Detroit. I don't think they have an Akuda over there, but pretty similar to what we have here. Their safeties, though, are pretty good. I think they're actually pretty underrated, in my opinion. Undervalued, at least. I feel like the Giants' safeties have really helped their defense, catapult themselves into that next level. And obviously that has to do with coaching and scheme and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, if the players don't execute, then it doesn't matter. So with that being said, I feel like the key on offense, the keys on defense, let's go over those one more time. Stop Saquon, sack the QB, and force turnovers. Clear ways to win a football game against any team, but specifically this New York Giants team. Offensively, what we need to do is we cannot have Goff mishaps. We cannot have firing the ball over a guy's head 10 yards or not getting it to him or, missing a wide open guy or throwing pick sixes or whatever, or taking bad sacks. We cannot have any of that. Why? Because the Giants will take that and capitalize. They will capitalize on our mistakes. That's why they are 7-2. Like I said prior to this, they are not 7-2 because they're the best football team in the world, folks. They're 7-2 because they don't make many mistakes and they capitalize on yours. They take teams and they whittle them down. They know how to play the right game of football, which, at the end of the day really, really hurts our football team, unfortunately for us. It's one of those things that they're kind of the opposite matchup from what we would want. Unfortunately, I feel like the Giants really are the exact team we don't want to play right now because they can really expose every single weakness we have. Our run defense is not very good. We're not very good against mobile quarterbacks. We allow some big plays downfield to speedy wide receivers, which they have. We don't get great pressure or sack the quarterback, which their weakness is their offensive line. So that's kind of, our weakness is our defensive line. There you go. And then, like I said, no Goff mishaps. We cannot have interceptions this game. We cannot do it. We will lose. I guarantee you, if Goff turns the ball over one time, we will lose. No questions asked. Because I really don't see Daniel Jones turning it over. I know that's insane to say to some of you people, some of you folks. But it's just like, I don't know. I feel like Daniel Jones has always been a solid quarterback. He's just never had, the surrounding cast and the coaching, but he's really showing it now. And so, yeah, we just can't have Goff turning the ball over. Number 2, we need to be able to run the ball consistently and well. We need to be able to average at least 4 yards per carry this game if we're going to even think about winning, because we cannot have DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams playing badly this game, because really our run game is what's going to take advantage of their defense, because their linebackers are not very good, like I said before. So I feel like it's going to be a pretty big thing for us running the ball. If we can run the ball, I think we could win the game for sure. Because, like I said, that's one of their weaknesses and that's one of our strengths. And if we can keep the ball out of their offense's hands, that's going to help stop Saquon as well. So it's kind of going to be a team effort to stop Saquon because he's just one of the best running backs in the league. Now, another huge thing that we need to do this week is have a few big plays because that's not something that we have every single week, but the last few weeks we've been winning, we have a few big plays here and there. Now to take down this Giants defense and this Giants team, we're going to need a little bit more than what we've had lately. It'd be great to have DJ Chark back for that reason, just at least as a decoy to at least think somebody's going deep. But at the end of the day, we don't want to rush him back, so we'll see how that goes. But big plays, whether it be on the ground, through the air, or on defense, big plays need to happen this week. Or on special teams. I mean, anything could happen. And then the last thing for this Sunday's game is, can we win? Now, I do believe we can. It is possible any given Sunday, but not even just because any given Sunday. I really do think the Lions have a legit chance to beat the Giants this weekend. However, I don't think it's going to happen, unfortunately. I think the Giants are just a little too good. They're coached very well. They don't make very many mistakes, like I said before. And, excuse me, I feel like they'll have not an easy time taking advantage of our weaknesses, but it'll be easier for them to take advantage of us than it would be the other way around. So with that being said, I think the Lions have a pretty solid chance to win this game. I honestly would say it's like 35% chance the Lions win. It would be higher if we were in Detroit, but of course we're in New York, so that changes it a little bit. It would probably be closer to 50-50 in my opinion, even though the Giants are 7-2. I know that sounds insane. The Giants are 7-2. We're talking about a 3-6 Lions team coming to New York, and I'm talking about it as if they can win. They can. It's possible. But I don't think it's going to happen, unfortunately. I do think this game ends up being a 27-23 Giants win. Pretty close game overall. I think it'll be, close all around. We won't have, won't be a blowout by any means, I hope. But I do think Saquon is going to be too much for us. And I just think our defense is not going to be able to force the turnovers that we really need. And unfortunately, I think Goff will end up turning the ball over at least once, if not taking a few bad sacks, which might as well be a turnover. I mean, I really do believe we should start calling that a turnover. When a quarterback takes a bad sack on like 3rd and long, that's got to be a turnover, bro. You basically just gave the ball to the other team. Like, I don't know. Anyway, I just feel like Goff is going to turn the ball over at least once. We're going to take some sacks. Our defense isn't going to be able to do what we hope. But all around, it'll still be a close game because the Lions don't give up. And like I said, the Giants, talent-wise, aren't like so much better than the Lions that it worries me. But I do think they're just a little bit better in the smaller areas, and they've shown they can win the close games, really, and they've beat some of the better teams. So who knows what could happen? But as of right now, I think the Lions lose 27-23, unfortunately for us. But either way, like I said, the Lions could always win. You never know what's going to happen. It's any given Sunday. But that'll do it for this episode. I appreciate you guys for watching. Y'all know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe, share this with your folks, or with your friends, I should say. And we'll see you on the next one. Peace.